Hey guys, Tom here again from synthhacker.com and welcome back to another tutorial for Native Instruments Massive. In this video we're going to be looking at using Massive to craft the perfect 808 style kick or bass drum, you know, for use in like trap, hip hop, stuff like that, whatever it is you guys are interested in making. And yeah, I'll just quickly demonstrate the sound and a few variations of it using these macros, and then we'll get into creating it. So a really nice smooth kick drum. Obviously, you know, typically a lot of people will just use, you know, the classic 808 sample and then tune it using a sampler or whatever. The trouble with that is when you're tuning an audio sample, it kind of loses, like, it degrades in quality the more you tune it away from what it was originally. Like, it's really advantageous using something like Massive to craft these types of kicks instead. I also think you just have, in general, the more kind of finer control over the sound as a whole, you know, with like the noise and distortion and the envelopes and everything. So yeah, I think this is probably the best approach to getting those kind of sounds that you guys are looking for, and it's really, really simple. So just bear with me through this tutorial, and we'll speed through it fairly quickly. So what I'm going to do is just initialize the patch here, so we're starting from a clean patch. As always guys, if you're new to the channel, feel free to subscribe to stay up to date with new synthesis tutorials that I bring out regularly, and also if you haven't done already, go ahead and check out my website over at synthhacker.com if you haven't done already, and go check out my presets for Massive. I really think you guys will get a lot of use out of those, and obviously it helps support me and the channel as well, so I appreciate that. But without further ado, let's begin making this sound completely from scratch. So first thing, we're just going to get rid of this vibrato control that sometimes pops up when you start a new patch. And we're just going to first of all start off in the voicing tab here, and one really important thing to mention for the sound is that it's obviously going to be monophonic. You're only going to be inputting one note at a time into Massive, and if we have it set to polyphonic, if you kind of have like one note, one kick drum quickly after another, they'll kind of like clash with each other, whereas when we set it to monophonic, it'll only be playing one sound at a time. The other thing to make sure you do is go into the oscillator tab and click this restart via gate button here. This just means that the wavetable position is going to start at exactly the same point every time a note is hit. So each kind of kick drum hit is going to be exactly the same, and it's going to be super consistent, which is obviously really important. Also, just make sure you turn the glide down as well. We are going to be having a little bit of pitch bend, but this is going to be controlled from the start of the sound rather than, you know, sliding from one note to another like the glide would give you. So we're only going to have one oscillator for the sound. It's going to be super simple. We're just going to use a sine square wavetable. We're going to use this one here, and we're going to turn the wavetable position all the way to the left, just so we're just using a completely pure sine wave. A lot of people really kind of overthink this process for some reason, to get like the best possible like purest low end that you can get, but you can't get any purer or any more kind of bassy and whole than an actual sine wave itself. So don't overthink this too much. Also, if you start with just a basic sine wave, although it might sound plain at first, you can then add distortion and so on later on to add a little bit of grit or interest to it, which we're actually going to do in this tutorial as well. Now we're actually going to pitch this down -20 for semitones, which is 2 octaves. This will depend on the octave of the MIDI notes that you're inputting into Massive, so you want to play around with this depending on the MIDI notes. I think I'm just using middle C, I believe, C3, so you know, if you were using like C1, you wouldn't need to actually pitch this down at all, but yeah, just bear that in mind, and just adjust the octave of this accordingly. We're going to route this just straight through filter 1, we're actually not going to use any filters in this sound, but we're just going to set it to series and then bring the mix down, and this just means that it's just going to completely bypass the filter. Typically if the filter's run and it was on in series, it would go through filter 1 and then filter 2 and then out, and then through mix 2, but because we're not using any filters in this sound, it doesn't really matter too much as long as the signal is actually being passed through. The next thing we're going to do is set up a envelope for the pitch of the oscillator 1, like right at the beginning, and this, like, really typically what gives the kick drum a lot of its attack is the amplitude envelope. So this is just like how loud the sound is at the start and the speed of the attack of the sound. And also typically what you'll find on most kick drums actually is that there'll also be a second envelope which is affecting the pitch of the sound, which also kind of adds that nice attack to the sound. So what we're going to do, we're going to use envelope 1 here to modulate the pitch of oscillator 1. We're just going to bring the attack back a little bit. We're going to bring the sustain right down and bring the decay down a little bit here. And we're actually going to give this a little bit of release as well. And then what we're going to do, we're going to simply drag and drop this onto our pitch control and then pitch this up around 17 semitones, something like that. It doesn't really matter too much as long as it is quite a high amount. And then I'll just quickly show you what this sounds like so far. And if you increase the decay, you'll actually notice more of the kind of change in pitch. It'll be slower. So this might be something that you want to kind of play around with and tweak to, you know, what you think sounds good. I'll just quickly show you. Like, my personal preference is I like it when you can't hear too much of the pitch and it's just a nice clean attack, but obviously that is completely up to you. And you know, you do typically hear a lot of these 808s that are like strongly pitched, which sound pretty cool as well. So that is the pitch envelopes set up. The next thing to do is set up our noise, our actual noise oscillator. Now this is again, is completely optional, but what I like to do on sounds like this is add just a little bit of noise to the start of the kick drum, just to kind of make it stick out of the mix a little bit more and kind of cut through the mix. It also just adds, I don't know, like a little bit of dustiness to it, which I think sounds really cool. And my favorite noise source for this is the tape hiss noise. I think it sounds really cool. And what we're actually going to do, we're actually going to use the same envelope that we set up for the pitch on oscillator 1. We're actually going to use this to modulate the amplitude, or basically be the amplitude envelope for this noise oscillator, and bring it up to about halfway. And I'll just quickly show you what this sounds like. So you can tell that sounds really cool, that nice little bit of grit at the start of the sound. Again, you don't have to have this in if you don't want it. If you just want it to be a completely pure tone, that's completely up to you. But I think this just adds like a nice bit of character to the sound, really. The next thing we are going to do, we're going to go into our amplitude envelope and just modulate this a little bit. We're going to bring the attack right back, so the amplitude of the sound as a whole is starting really quick with a nice fast attack. We're again going to bring the sustain down, but we are going to increase the decay a little bit. Again, this is just down to personal preference. If you want just a really short punchy 808, you can have the decay quite short. If you want a nice kind of long, more like trap 808 kick, then you're going to want a long-ish delay. I'm also going to increase the release a little bit, as you can see here. So this is what we have now. Which is really cool. That's the kind of basic kind of building block of this type of sound. But what we're going to do, we're actually going to add a little bit of interest to the sound, and this is again is completely optional, but I think it sounds really cool. The first thing that I showed you at the start was me actually changing this sine shaper insert. Just make sure it's routed after the filter section. It doesn't really matter too much really, because we're not using the filter section anyway, but just make sure it's actually switched on. Sometimes you'll find that it's switched off. And then what we're going to do is bring the dry wet of this sine shaper down a little bit and bring the drive down a little bit. And then what I did was actually set up a macro control just to allow, you know, like convenient change of this. And basically Sound Shaper is just a type of distortion that's just going to add some really nice upper harmonics to the sound, which I'll show you. I quite like it, like just a bit of subtle sound shape. I think it sounds really cool, makes it sound much more interesting than just a sine wave, but that's completely optional. I think that sounds really, really cool. And then another type of distortion which I think sounds cool is one of the tube emulations, which is this classic tube. Again, we're just going to bring the dry wet down a bit, bring the drive down a bit, and set up another macro control, and set this up on the drive like that. And what we're going to do is bring the macro control for the other one down, just so we can hear this on its own. That sounds absolutely awesome, especially if you go, the sound you're going for is like really heavy, really distorted. That'll sound absolutely sick through like big systems. And then I think the final thing I did was just bring the master down a bit, so the amplitude of the sound as a whole drops. And then what I did was actually use the low shelf EQ just to boost the low end just a little bit. You don't want to overdo it. But this just means that the kind of noise and attack of the sound is going to be a little bit quieter, but the kind of low end is going to be boosted a little bit. And there you go, that is how to craft the perfect 808 kick. Hopefully you learned a lot from this video. You really hopefully took away how to craft the perfect 808 that you are actually looking for. You know, you can control things like the distortion, the overall tone of the sound, how much noise is at the start using the tape amp. You can control the amplitude decay, how long it takes to ring out, and also don't forget the pitch envelope as well. You can choose whether it's like a really obvious pitch shift or if it's just a nice sharp attack. And yeah, hopefully you got a lot of use out of this video. It's a really, really cool sound, absolutely classic sound, really useful to know how to make sounds like this and to be able to craft your own drums. And yeah, that covers everything, guys. So if you have any questions or suggestions for future tutorials, feel free to leave those down in the comments down below. Again, if you haven't already, guys, please subscribe to the channel to stay up to date with new tutorials that I'm bringing out regularly. And again, if you haven't done already, definitely go ahead and check out my website over at synthhacker.com. I currently have a sale on the Massive Mega Pack, which contains 500 presets, all handcrafted by me for Massive. I don't actually have like specifically a trap preset pack, but a lot of the sounds in like the house pack and the trance pack, and all those, and the new disco pack and everything, are really transferable to genres like trap. So definitely go ahead and check those out. I think you'll definitely find those really, really useful, both to use in your tracks and also to reverse engineer as well. So that's all from me, guys. Thanks a lot for your support. I really do appreciate it. I'm having an absolute blast like bringing out these tutorials for you guys, so thanks, I really do appreciate it. And that's all from me, guys. Thanks a lot for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.